Chapter 11. Cherokee. "It's tough on you boys," Eben went on. "I reckon you'll feel bad about it, but it can't be helped." "These are fine thanks for rescuing you," Guy flung at him bitterly. "I almost wish we'd left you to the Indians." There was a trace of guilt in the hunter's grin as he retorted, "I'm just as glad you didn't, son. But if you had, they'd have catched you as well. By this, maybe that evens things some." "How far do you mean to take us with you?" Alistair rapped at him, interrupting. "As far as Smoky Rapids," was the answer. "We'll have to make a portage there. This canoe's too big for me to haul by myself, and I'll need help." Guy had heard about portages. These were places along a river which were too rough or dangerous to attempt in a canoe. Travellers had to lift out their boats and carry them until they reached a spot where they could float again. "Where is this place?" he asked. "How long will it take to reach it?" "She'll get there this evening, if all's well. You fellas can carry the canoe down below the rapids, and then you can skip, if you're set on it." "We're obliged by your kind permission. I trust that you will be able to get along without us afterwards," replied Alistair with sarcasm. Eben shrugged, but the muzzle of his weapon dropped and did not point at them any longer. He knew he had won. "Ain't no skin off my nose, what you do? More like to be skin off your hide, come to that, but that's your affair, Mac." "We must help him get word to the people down below," Guy said to his friends after a while. "We can do no less, whatever happens to us." "You speak fairly, Guy. If it were not for that, it was in my mind to turn the boat over and see if his long gun would help him then." Alistair smiled wryly and picked up his paddle. All three knew in their hearts that they must help the trapper to get his message through, whatever the cost to themselves. Convicts though they were, they could not leave a whole people exposed to surprise and massacre without warning. Eben laughed softly as they bent to the paddles. "I could see you gripping the sides of the canoe," he admitted, "and I was a heap puzzled what to do. For I couldn't have shot at you, whatever you did. Thanks a lot, boys." Knowing that the sooner they reached the rapids, the sooner they would finish their task, they set to with a will, and presently the light craft was speeding through the water once more. They did not stop for meals. Occasionally they let the canoe drift while they ate a few mouthfuls of the pemmican, which they found very sustaining, but most of the time they paddled hard. As Eben predicted, they came to the head of Smoky Rapids late in the afternoon. They pulled in to the bank when he gave the word, while he trained his rifle on the shore and peered at the woods. Guy sensed that he was uneasy. Before landing he sat in the boat for some minutes, with the hammer cocked and the long gun ready to jerk up at his shoulder. He looked as if he expected to have to shoot at any instant. "What's amiss, Eben?" Guy could not help the question. The scout frowned, never moving his keen stare from the woods. "I dunno," he growled. "I got a feeling. There's something unhealthy around here somewheres. I don't like it." He spoke in a whisper, and then told them to let the canoe go to the shore quietly, ready to push out again, at once, if there was need. The nose of the vessel grounded with a soft bump, and Eben hopped ashore, his moccasins making no sound. "Wait here," he murmured. "If I ain't back in 2-3 minutes, shove off and take your chance, because it'll be the only one you got. And do it right fast." With that he vanished. To Guy, kneeling in the canoe and waiting, it seemed a long time before he came back, for the seconds dragged like hours. All of them had caught Eben's disquiet, and their nerves were stretched to the utmost. Guy stared about him, expecting to see the hideous painted face of an Indian leer at him from behind every bush, but all remained quiet. It was a deathly unpleasant stillness, broke only by a dull, continuous roar which came from farther down the river. The river swung to the right a little way downstream, and they could not see the rapids. But already the current was quickening, and they had trouble to hold the canoe steady against its powerful drag. Eben reappeared after a while, showing up on the bank as quietly as he had gone. He was a trifle less anxious, but still uneasy. "Can't see nothing wrong," he told them. "Maybe I'm just scared of shadows, but I still got a hunch we're running into bad luck." They lifted the canoe out of the water at his direction. It was amazingly light. They dumped out the gear and slung it about their bodies so that it would not impede them when they walked. Then they turned the canoe upside down and carried it on their shoulders through the woods. Part of the way they had to go alongside the rapids, and Guy could see why they were called Smoky. The water surged down a long narrow chasm, as polished as glass, for more than 100 yards. At the bottom of the slope of green, racing clearness, it threw itself headlong into a cauldron of boulders with a fury that shook the banks. The basin was huge, and rocks lay thick all across the bed of the torrent. The water hit them with a sullen thunder. Churned into foam, it boiled madly as it swept through them and plunged onward at the same reckless pace. Above it, the spray lifted in clouds, drenching everything with a fine mist, which rose in a white billowing pall, high in the air. It looked as if the whole river was afire and smoking. Guy realised that no boat could live in that fearful confusion. The drizzle of the spray moistened his face with a sinister caress, and he shuddered goosely. Indians or no, he was glad to be on dry land. The rapids stretched for 2 miles in a chain of smooth, fast races linked with rock-strewn whirlpools. They were no more than an hour carrying the canoe to the bottom. By then, dusk was falling, and the shadows gloomed over the calmer reaches at the foot of the cataract. Here they rested. While Eben reloaded his rifle after removing the charge, he took great care to see that it was dry under the deer-hide cover that shielded the lock. Guy watched him change the priming. Now that the time had come for them to leave, an odd feeling came to the boy. He wondered whether they ought to make their bid for escape, or go on to help the trapper with his mission. "How far is the nearest white dwelling?" he asked. His voice was dull with dejection. Even if they got clear of the Indians and went with Eben, the fate that waited for them among their own people was frightening. The woods behind were thronged with savage Cherokees, if what Eben said was true. Blankly he was faced with the fact that they had no hope of success, whatever they did. Eben answered, smearing the rifle's metal with a patch of greasy leather. "Abner Foxley's trading post is 50 miles east of here. If I can reach it, he'll loan me an oss to finish the trip." Hard and keen, his grey eye cocked itself at them, and he went on. "You fellas gonna light out for the Ohio, I reckon." There was silence. They looked at each other with white set faces. The same problem was in all their minds. What could they do? The hunter's level stare went past them, and Guy knew he was weighing his chances of getting through with his message. If he failed, there would be nobody else to carry it. "Well, Guy," Alistair spoke softly, "which is it to be? A run for our own skins, or a race to Foxley's store?" Guy took a deep breath. A moment before he had been queasy at the thought of what lay in front of them. But that did not trouble him any more. "Why, we'll go with Eben," he said, and grinned. Eben stood up. Hefting the rifle easily in his left hand, he too smiled, as his right hand came forward to grasp Guy's. "That's just dandy," he exclaimed. "I was sure hoping you would." He cast a rapid glance around them, searching the dense thickets of hickory and spruce with his gaze. "I'll go take a look around for a spell. Don't aim to be long." Though more settled and happier in his mind, the hunter was still nervous. He slipped off between the trees and vanished like a ghost into the twilit woods. He was not long gone. Soon he came back running lightly, with the silent tread Guy never ceased to admire. When he reached them, his face was pale and strained under his coat of sunburn. "Get that canoe afloat, quick," he whispered fiercely. "There's a bunch of 'em on the portage above us, coming down on our trail." Guy felt a cold squeeze deep down in his stomach. Indians. Eben's white teeth glinted in his beard, wry and twisted, and a sound like a chuckle escaped him. "They sure ain't His Majesty's foot guards." In desperate haste they slid the canoe into the water, and piled their simple luggage in the waist. Even while they floated it, a silent, vicious streak hurtled past Guy's cheek, making him jump back before it skimmed into the river. They heard the next one. Zhweep! The arrow buzzed with the note of an angry insect and slashed through the willow leaves behind them. "Jump!" yelled Willett, his voice crackling. They sent the canoe darting into the stream under a hail of shafts which hummed all around them. At the same time a horrid screech rang out, wild and echoing over the water. Guy's blood froze at the sound. By this time he knew the Cherokee war yell. Piling into the boat, they seized the paddles and dug hard into the current, knowing that their only chance lay in speed. Unless they got out of bow-shot, they would look like pincushions in a few moments. Eben sat in the stern, balancing his rifle and staring back at the shore. Suddenly he threw the piece to his shoulder, and the evening was split by its deafening crack. A silence followed, then something rolled down the bank to fall into the shallows, where it lay still. "That's one for us," Eben grunted, busy with his ramrod. His voice was muffled. He spat a bullet into his hand, and Guy saw that he had a mouthful of them. Wrapped in a patch of cloth, it went down the 4-foot barrel and was rammed home like lightning. "How did they get here so soon?" Guy gasped. "This is another outfit," Eben replied, raising the weapon again. "Likely there's more ahead. That bunch we had the fuss with back yonder wasn't the one of the leading parties, and they travel like the wind when they're in a hurry." He fired as he spoke, and a screech of defiance came in answer. "Miss that son of a gun, dang it!" Eben shook his head. "But we're out of range now, so it don't signify." Until then the others had seen nothing, but at that moment a group of lean dark figures came out of the foliage onto the bank. They fired a last salvo of arrows, which fell far short of the canoe. Eben sent back a whoop, fully as terrifying as the hoot of the Indians, defiant and insulting. The red men held threats, capering and shaking their weapons. They were arrogant, and even laughing. One of them shouted a gobbled sentence. Eben reloaded. "He says we ain't going to get through. Guess he means it. You can gamble they'll have bust theirselves to nail us. They don't want no warning to reach the plantations." The trapper bawled some words back in an unknown tongue. The savages waved their hatchets fiercely and went back into the brush. "I jest told 'em they was too slow to catch a terrapin swimming in a lake of molasses," said Eben, picking up his paddle. "Now we got to prove it, or we're dead ducks. That feller knows there are a heap of his brothers between us and salvation."